What is up, everybody? Pisces, I'm here to bring the faculty journal to you. 35 pages. It's a lot. This video is going to be very long. We're going to look at original research and forecasting technique. This is going to involve conceptual laboratory entries, interoffice memoranda, theoretical essays, proposed solutions to the historical problems of the discipline, the working papers of the Institute's Department of Predictive Technique, bound for the faculty shelf. Let's get started with peace and love. Hopefully you can learn some astrology for free today. So quick, we're going to give the classified notice here. Handling classification. First, this compendium is classified Institute Internal Advanced Research as the property of the Advanced Astrology Forecasting Institute and is distributed exclusively to faculty, research fellows, and invited examiners of the Department of Predictive Technique. Reproduction, circulation, or quotation beyond the Institute's teaching program requires the written assent of the Dean of Forecasting. Nature of the contents. The entries that follow are working documents, hypotheses, and progress, proposed protocols, and provisional solutions. They are published within these covers for the advancement of the discipline and for adversarial review by the faculty, not a settled doctrine. Where a theory is falsifiable, its falsification conditions are stated openly. The Institute's teaching lessons remain the canonical curriculum. This journal is its research frontier. So the forecasting series, I made 2 videos on solar returns. One is V2, and that's referring to that lesson. And then I also made a video on lunar returns. So ethics of prediction, we see forecasting is a discipline of probability, not fate. Every technique proposed in this journal is offered as a lens of emphasis, a way of reading this guy's conversation with a birth chart, never as a deterministic critic. Faculty are reminded that no astrological inference overrides the dignity, freedom, or responsibility of the subject. Where reading touches life decisions, health, finance, relationships, the Institute directs subjects to licensed professionals and treats the forecast as contemplative, not prescriptive. So in this video, we are going to go over a few different things. The front matter, classification, contents, forward, classified notice, forward from the desk of the Dean of Forecasting, and then faculty journal entry logs. So the first entry is going to be the house shift signature as yearly theme indicator. Then we'll see an entry on field notes, 13 lunar returns, 1 subject, an entry on the missing planet problem, entry on intercepted signs in the disappearing house, entry on the illumination phase as mood governor, entry on the eclipse fingerprint, first impressions, an entry on declination survey of the return year, and an entry on the karmic axis, first hypothesis on the nodes. Alright, and we're also going to look at inter-office memoranda. So first, proposed collaboration, declination lab, X eclipse group, then methodological caution on the solar arc, and then circulation of the house system reconciliation. We'll also be reading faculty journal entry logs continued, retrograde signature of the reading protocol, toward a unified orb doctrine, the solar arc X return synthesis, toward the resynthesis station, and also theories, house shift signature formalized, and the return cycle orb doctrine. There's also going to be solutions to historical astrological issues, the house system controversy reconciled, the retrograde interpretation problem, the empty houses interpretation gap, and the missing planet problem result. Then we'll actually look at classified compendium of proprietary techniques, an appendix supporting ephemeris data and methodology, glossary of terms, supplement research workbook and further reading, and the video with notes and references. So a lot to get into, so let's get started with peace and love. How to read this journal? Well, you're not physically holding it, but if you are, the entries are chronological working notes, the theories are the formal distillations, the solutions address the historical problems directly, the compendium is the index of proprietary techniques, figures are number 1 through 10 and cross-reference from the text, footnotes collect at the end, key to the superscripts in the body. Forward from the desk of the Dean of Forecasting. Every discipline that pretends to knowledge must also keep a ledger of its ignorance. The pages that follow are that ledger, kept honestly. They record not only what the faculty of this institute believes it has learned, but how it learned it, by staring at the same 6 eclipses, the same 13 lunar returns, the same stubborn birth chart of our teaching subject, until the sky surrendered a pattern it had not intended to show. The reader will find no finished system here. What she will find is a working method, dated entries in a laboratory register, memoranda circulated between desks, theories stated with their falsification conditions attached, and in the final sections proposed solutions to the historical problems that have divided astrologers since Ptolemy the house system controversy, the retrograde puzzle, empty house gap, the missing planet embarrassment. We hold our proposals to one standard. They must be computable, falsifiable, and reproducible. Every number in this volume was generated from the Swiss ephemeris by deterministic scripts, and the entire compendium can be rebuilt from source in a single pass. If a colleague cannot rederive our results, we have not written science, we have written opinion. The Institute publishes opinion gladly, but only under the name of the colleague who can defend it with data. So read and view the video generously, argue fiercely, and check every degree. So first we're getting into the faculty journal entry logs. The entries below are reproduced from the faculty laboratory register, kept in first person as working notes. Dates are the dates of writing. Charts and figures are cross-referenced by number, the teaching subject of the Institute's lessons. 1, 2, an example born August 21st, 1992, 1435 CDT, Chicago, serves throughout as a shared experimental subject of the department. So we see this first entry is the house shift signature as yearly theme indicator. Filed September 2nd, 2026 by Professor A. Vela, PhD, with the Department of Predictive Technique. She says, I have spent the summer rereading the same solar return 12 times, and I am now convinced the department has been reading the wrong layer. We ask what the return sun touches, what the angles announce, which planets cluster. All of that is legitimate, but the loudest signal in the 2026 return for our subject has been sitting in plain sight, not where the planets are, but where they have moved from. Consider the migration. The natal sun in the 9th house arrives in the 6th. The natal moon in the 6th arrives in the 10th. Venus moves 9th to 7th. Uranus 2nd to 3rd. Pluto holds its post in the 12th. Each shift is a displacement of emphasis, a theme physically relocating across the cusps. I propose we read these displacements as the year's indices. The sun's 9-6 shift says the year's meaning-making migrates from philosophy into daily service. The moon's 6-10 says emotional life moves from the workbench to the public stage. Venus 9-7 moves love from belief into partnership proper. The signature as I drafted is the ordered vector of shifts. Each red is an index of the year's theme. When the moon crosses an angle, 6-10 passes through the MC, the emotion of the year is public. When Saturn shifts only 2 on the structure of the year contracts toward the self. I have filed a formal statement as Theory A, and will test it against the lunar return sequence for the same year before the term ends. So here we see the hollow row square equals the natal house, with the filled gold square equals the return house. Teal tag equals theme shifts in houses, for example, adding 4 equals 4 houses onward equals same house. So the house shift grid for the 2026 solar return, hollow rows squares are natal houses, filled gold squared is return houses, teal tags assigned shift, the moon's adding 4 across the MC is a year's lattice displacement. So we see Neptune being affected, Saturn as well, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and the sun. And what I really like about this, the house shift signature, birth to 2026 solar return, we see each planet's migration across the house cusps, as well as red as the year's themed indices. So the hollow row square is the natal house. So we know that Saturn is sitting in the first. We know that Uranus is also natally there. Neptune is sitting there as well. And Saturn is sitting in the second house, Uranus in the second house, Neptune in the second house. If we do notice, there's activation with the 6th, the 8th, the 9th, and the 7th. And then the MC hits, subtracting and adding. Occurs with the sun in the 6th house, subtracted by 3, and then the 9th house. Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and then Pluto, through Saturn, Uranus, Neptune as well. And now the second entry is going to be field notes, 13 lunar returns, 1 subject. Department of Lunar Returns Laboratory. So the lunar return series for our subject yields 13 monthly charts, and their moon house sequence is a remarkable document. The moon visits the 10th house 4 times in 13 months, a concentration no random walk would produce casually. Career and public standing are the year's recurring stage, consistent with entry 1, 610 solar return shift, 2 instruments, 1 verdict, the year is public. The intervals between returns vary from 653.6 to 659.3 hours, with the mean 656.4 hours, bracketing the sidereal month of 655.7 hours. The moon's eccentric orbit stretches and compresses the month by nearly 6 hours. No two lunar returns of the year are cast at the same phase either. The phase migrates from last quarter through full moon to new moon across the sequence. The month's grammar is never identical twice. I've attached the phase survey as figure 8 and entry 5. Practical consequence for the department: the lunar return must always be read with the phase in hand, because the same moon in the same house feels different under a new moon seating than under a last quarter release. The phase is the month's mood governor. Entry 3 is the missing planet problem. Department of Predictive Technique. Today's seminar raised the old embarrassment again, and I wanted to answer properly this time. Every solar system has its full inventory of planets. Every birth chart, therefore, contains every planet. Yet forecasters speak of the missing planet, the planet that, in a given chart or year, seems to have nothing to say. My position: the problem is not a defect of the sky, but of our reading discipline. A planet is never absent, it is only unactivated. The activation model I am drafting has 3 thresholds. A planet becomes audible when it is angular in a stellium or the dispositor of an angular planet, vocal when it receives a transit or return aspect within the tight orbs of the year, and dominant when 2 or more of these conditions coincide. Neptune in our subject's chart is a classic missing planet, 16 degrees Capricorn in the second, slow, quiet, but in the 2026 return, Neptune stations on the descendant of the year, and in declination it parks within a degree of the celestial equator. It is not missing, it is whispering our instruments were not turned up. Full resolution filed as solution 4. The principle in one sentence: every planet has a register, silence is a register too. Entry 4 is going to be intercepted signs in the disappearing house. Department of Lunar Returns Laboratory. So a student asked today why the subject's lunar return of September 3rd, 2026, chaos for Chicago, contains an intercepted pair, 2 signs with no cusp falling inside them. I confirmed the interception. In Placidus houses at 41.9 degrees north, the return wheel shows intercepted signs that swallow the affairs of 2 houses whole. The student's discomfort is legitimate. A house whose cusp never appears is not a house that has vanished. It is a house whose threshold has vanished. My working rule for interceptions and return charts in intercepted houses: Department of Life that operates without visible ceremony for the duration of the chart. Its affairs proceed but quietly, without milestones. Planets inside the intercepted sign are the exception. They are allowed because unthresholded. Their affairs cannot be scheduled, only felt. In the September 2026 lunar return, the intercepted region and its inhabitants deserve a note in every forecast, precisely because the novice will overlook them. The house system choice changes which signs are intercepted at all. Under whole sign houses, the interception vanishes. Each sign is a house by fiat. The faculty's reconciliation of these systems is circulating as solution 1. My laboratory's position is that interception is a Placidus phenomenon to be read as information, not ignored as artifact. And entry 5 is the lunation phase as mood governor, out by the Department of Lunar Returns Laboratory. So I have been collating the 13 lunar returns of 2026 to 2027 by phase, and the pattern is too consistent to be noise. The phase of the return sets the effective thermostat of the entire month. New moon returns open months of seeding and initiation. First quarter returns open months of decision under pressure. Full moon returns open months of illumination and relationship. Last quarter returns open months of release and revision. The moon's house tells us where the month happens. The phase tells us how it will feel. I propose the mood governor hypothesis. The phase of the return is the month's grammar, and the house is its vocabulary. So the worked September 2026 return falls at elongation 262.6 degrees. Last quarter release with the moon in the 7th house. A month of letting go inside partnership, of revising the terms of a relationship or contract. Had the identical chart risen under a new moon, the month would read as a seeding of a partnership rather than as revision. Same stage, different play. So we see the 8 phase division, 45 degrees per phase, is our teaching convention. The 4 primary phases carry the strongest signatures, and figure 8 maps the year's returns onto the wheel of phases. So here we see the lunation phase as mood governor, with the 13 returns of 2026 to 2027 phase colored. So we see the 7th house, last quarter, the 2nd house, waning gibbous, and the 10th house, waning gibbous. 4th house, full moon. 9th house, waxing gibbous. 3rd house, waxing gibbous. The 10th house and the 7th house, experiencing first quarters. The waxing crescent goes to the 3rd house. We see the new moons occurring in the 5th house, in the 10th house. In the waning crescents, we see occurring in the 10th house, the 5th house. So this is the phase of the return, sets the month's effective thermostat. The mood of the month is set as a return. 8 phases, 8 effective registers. The mood governor sets the register, the house sets the stage, aspects cast the play. So the lunation phase, as mood governor, the 8 effective registers around the wheel, with the 13 returns. The order of September return, last quarter, 7th house, is a month of release and partnership. So we see waning gibbous, share, release for last quarter, rest during the waning crescent, seed for the new, waxing crescent, intend, decide for the first quarter moon, waxing gibbous, refine, and full moon is illuminate. And entry 6, we're going to look at the eclipse fingerprint first impressions, filed by the Department of Eclipse and Node Research Group. So the Eclipse Group has completed a survey of the 2026 through 2027 eclipse season. I am filing my first impressions. You see 6 eclipses in 2 years, 4 solar with 2 lunar, each with its own node, declination, and contact pattern against our subject's charts. The August 2026 pair is the department's gift, the solar eclipse of August 12, 2026. At 20 degrees Leo, it stands in exact opposition to the natal sun, which is an orb of 0.14 degrees. I recomputed it 3 times, while the lunar eclipse of August 27th, 2026 squares the natal moon by a single degree and is simultaneously the full moon anchoring the worked month of lesson 2. I am calling the full contact pattern node polarity, luminary declination, and the aspect orbs to natal sun, moon, and angles. The eclipse fingerprint. The fingerprint is present of the year of the eclipse, and it leaves its print on every return chart chaos between that eclipse and the next, the August 12th solar eclipse opposing the natal sun, and prints the whole return year with the solar axis theme of identity versus other. The August 27th lunar eclipse squares the natal moon, imprinting the emotional axis with crisis and release. The formal development is theory D. The falsification condition is stated there. If the fingerprint's predicted emphasis fails to appear in the returns that follow an eclipse, the theory falls. And we see the eclipse fingerprint. An eclipse is fingerprint pressed into the year, node multiplied by luminary, multiplied by aspect contact with the natal and return chart. So fingerprint press, 6 eclipses. The time frame. We see the south node, opposition 0.1 degrees, square 5.0 degrees, quincunx 2.6 degrees, and opposition 0.1 degrees. And then we see the south node square 5.4 degrees. We see the north node now tight contact. North node opposition 5.9 degrees. Square 1.1 degrees, square 2.6 degrees, opposition 5.9 degrees. South node no tight contact, and then the north node with a trine of 2.4 degrees. Solar eclipse 20 degrees Leo. The eclipse fingerprint, so the August 12th, 2026 solar eclipse. Leo's on the left. And then we see the 6 eclipse press on the right with their aspect contacts against the natal and return charts. Declination survey of the return year, filed by the Declination Laboratory. So the Declination Laboratory has completed a daily survey of the 2026 through 2027 solar return year, and the year's latitudes tell their own story. The sun oscillates between negative 23.4 degrees and adding 23.4 degrees. I meant to say subtracting. I keep saying negative. Subtracting 23.4 degrees, the familiar seasonal band. And the moon swings wider, adding subtracting 28.0 degrees, carrying its feelings nearly 5 degrees beyond the sun's reach. The quantitative basis for our latitude of feeling doctrine. But the outer planets are a revelation. Neptune spends the entire year within 1.4 degrees of the celestial equator, mean ab 0.65 degrees, the planet of dissolution parked on the equator of the psyche, dissolving the boundary between self and not self with perfect horizontality. Saturn climbs from adding 0.8 degrees to adding 8.3 degrees across the year, duty rising above the equator of habit. Month by month, we see Uranus holds a steady high northern band, adding 20.4 degrees to 21, adding 21.8 degrees. And we see that Pluto is pinned at subtracting 23 degrees, the transformer working below the equator, not in the basement of the chart. I submit that the declination is not an ornament of longitude work, but a parallel coordinate system, and that its most powerful use is comparative. A planet far from the equator is loud, a planet on the equator is transparent. We see Neptune on the equator is invisible precisely because it is everywhere. The full curve figure is filed as figure 9. The orb doctrine that follows from this work is theory B. So here we see declination curves across this solar return year. Sun's adding subtracting 23.4 degrees band, Moon's wider adding subtracting 28 degrees swing, Saturn's climb, and Neptune's flat line on the celestial equator. The year's latitudes, declination curves, solar return year. And we also see a key right here. The celestial equator is right here. With the equinox, the declination is going to be the degrees from celestial equator from negative 30, negative 20, negative 10, 0, 10, 20, 30. And we see the sun line is of course yellow. We notice it starts at 10, goes down to about in the middle of 100 and 150. It's Neptune's flat line at 0 degrees equals the equator of the psyche. Saturn's climb is adding 0.8 to 8.3, and the year's duty rising above the equator of habit. We also see the sun at 20, fluctuating and going to 350 this time. Then we see for Pluto, it's a complete flat line all the way at the bottom. So probably in the middle of negative 30 and negative 20, probably like negative 25. And then we see Moon is constantly fluctuating up and down. And then goes up for the equinox. We see Neptune is also going straight through that celestial equator. We see Saturn kind of curving. And then we see Uranus atop at the equinox. And here is another equinox. So the karmic axes, first hypothesis on the nodes. From the Eclipse and Node Research Group. The nodes have been treated for too long as a pair of points. I propose we treat them as an axis, a diameter of the chart, and therefore a line of integration, rather than two isolated degrees. The natal node axis of our subject runs through 14 degrees Capricorn Cancer. Across the second 8th house pair, the axis of resources, shared and owned, earned and inherited, every planet that crosses either end of that axis in transit or return presses the karmic topic of the pair. You see that the moon is the axis' monthly courier. Each lunar return, the moon crosses the node axis twice per sidereal month, reawakening the karma of the second 8th pair for the days of the crossing. Eclipse seasons are the axis annual press. Eclipses occur within 18 degrees of the nodes, so every eclipse is a nodal event by construction. The 2026 through 2027 eclipse clusters in Leo, Aquarius, and Virgo, Pisces, pressing the axes of identity and service respectively at the year's 2 seasons. So hypothesis for the register return chart with the planet conjunct either node, adding subtracting 2 degrees, or with the moon crossing the axis within the chart's validity. It shows a month of karmic bookkeeping on the axis topics. The full development is theory F, the ladder of practice is drawn in figure 5. So we see the node as the karmic axis, the natal axis through 14 degrees Capricorn Cancer on the left. And on the right, 5-step reading ladder. The nodes as karmic axes, the axes of integration. So we notice first is map, find the natal node axis, note the signs in the houses it falls across. Next is tally, count transits, progressions, and returns to touch either node degree, adding, subtracting 2 degrees. Next, watch the moon. The moon's monthly crossing of the node axis reawakens the karma of that axis for the month. Next is eclipse season. Eclipses occur within 18 degrees of the nodes. Each eclipse season is a nodal press, karma made visible. And last is synthesize the axes of integration, is signs, houses. This month the moon presses it at degree, reopening theme. And now into the inter-office memoranda. These are going to be pretty short memos. I'm just going to go through 3 of them here. So the first memo is to Eclipse and AMP Node Research Group from Declination Laboratory, responding to proposed collaboration, Declination Lab X Eclipse Group. Okafor says, your declination survey and my eclipse fingerprint are describing the same phenomenon from 2 angles, and I propose we combine them. Your data show Neptune flatline on the celestial equator for the entire return year. My eclipse survey shows the August 27, 2026 lunar eclipse at declination, 9.3 degrees square the natal moon, square the ascendant. Hypothesis to test jointly. Eclipses whose luminary declination matches the natal body's declination band press harder than eclipses that miss it. Your curves give us the baseline, my press gives us the events. Shall I circulate a protocol for the spring semester? SH. Second memo is to all faculty from Professor A. Vela, responding to methodological caution on the solar arc. Colleagues, before the solar arc synthesis, or SA, is taught alongside the returns, one caution must be on the record. The solar arc is a uniform motion applied to all points of the natal chart, 1 degree per year of life in the classical approximation, or the exact cumulative solar motion in the modern form. It is a beautiful and powerful clock, but it is not a transit. A transit is a physical body moving through the sky. An arc is a mathematical construction. They can agree in the synthesis, and theory E exploits exactly that agreement, but when they disagree, the transit describes the world and the arc describes the subject. The arc dates the subject's readiness, the transit dates the world's offer. Please flag this distinction in every lecture. The synthesis is only as sound as the discipline of its 2 clocks. And the third memoro is going to be to all faculty from the Office of Dean of Forecasting, responding to circulation of the House System Reconciliation. The Dean's Office is circulating for faculty comment. The reconciliation framework of Solution 1 places the clock whole sign as the compass equals the ruler. Comment is invited through the end of the term, after which the framework will be proposed for adoption in the teaching curriculum of the coming year. The Institute's default for published return charge remains placed as the reconciliation does not displace the default, it disciplines it. 15 working days are allowed for reply. Replies longer than 1 page are welcomed and will be filed in the register. Right, more faculty journal entry logs. Retrograde signature, the reading protocol. Department of Lunar Returns Laboratory, or LRL. The retrograde question has divided the faculty for years. Does a retrograde planet weaken, internalize, or invert? My laboratory's answer after a season of return charts is that the question is wrongly posed. A retrograde planet in a return chart is not a weakened planet. It is the planet whose affairs are being reviewed. The grammar is internalization, rework, and reownership. The theme comes back for a second pass, and the second pass is the point. The 2026 SR offers the perfect exhibit. Uranus in the return chart stands at 05 degrees Gemini. Retrograde and stationary, the year's resynthesis station. Uranus rules the subject's natal 11th house, friendship networks the future. Station reopens that department for review. The house shift grid corroborates. Uranus migrates to 3, carrying the theme of invention into the house of communication. 2 independent instruments agree. The year renegotiates the subject's relationship to networks and inventions. 6-step reading ladder. Locate, measure, angle, aspect, original, synthesize is drawn in figure 3 and filed in as solution 2. So here we have the retrograde signature protocol. 6 steps from locate to synthesize with the 2026 returns Uranus station as a worked example. So Uranus in Gemini 05 degrees at station, the resynthesis station of the year. The house it rules, natal 11th, reopens the year's network and invention theme. We see the retrograde signature protocol. Retrograde planets and return charts are read as internalized, reworked, re-examined themes, not as weekend planets. So first we locate which houses does the retrograde planet rule in the natal chart. Its affairs move inward then outward. Second, measure how far has it retrograded in longitude since the previous return. The arc equals the distance the theme has reopened. Next is angle. Is it angular within 8 degrees of the ascendant midheaven? Angular retrogrades with the loudest internal dialogues of the month or year. Next is aspect. Aspects to the retrograde planet receive. Aspects from it deliver. Read its aspects as conversations it initiates. Next is original. Find its degree in the natal chart. A return retrograde at its natal degree equals a synthesis station, a theme coming full circle. And we see synthesize. Grammar, the house theme is being reviewed. Revise and re-own this cycle. Expect return visits from planet affairs. Toward a unified orb doctrine. Declination laboratory. So the orbs question has been settled by custom, not by reason. 8 degrees for conjunctions, 6 degrees for trines and squares, 4 degrees for sextiles, 2 degrees for the minor aspects. The Institute's return orbs inherited from Lesson 01. Custom is not evidence. My laboratory proposes that orbs should be weighted by 2 observable quantities, the declination of the bodies and their speed. Declination weighting. A body far from the celestial equator operates at high latitude, where its light falls obliquely, and its presence is unmistakable. A body on the equator is transparent. The effective orb should expand with declination, so that a moon at adding 26 degrees, our September 2026 return moon, commands an orb of roughly 10 degrees, while a moon near 0 degrees contracts to the base 8 degrees. Speed weighting. A fast body covers more sky per day and touches more degrees. Slow body lingers. The effective orb should scale with the cube root of the speed ratio, so Mercury swift conjunctions claim more, Saturn's glacial conjunctions less. The combined protocol is theory B, and the figure is figure 2. The falsification condition is brutal as stated in the theory. If weighted orbs do not change the ranking of a chart's loudest aspects in a majority of test charts, the doctrine is decorative and must be withdrawn. So here we see the moon at high declination speaks louder. In this chart, speed weighted orb protocol. And we see that speed is the amplifier, slow planet's orb contracts, a fast planet's orb expands right here. So the declination and speed weighted orb protocol, effective orb expands with declination left and with mean daily motion right. So we see effective aspect orb from 8 to 12. And on the bottom, 0 to 25, declination of the body degrees from the celestial equator, the combined protocol effective orb. We see the return moon declination is adding 26.1 degrees. The effective orb is 11.8 degrees. With the base return orb starting at 8 degrees. In this chart, we see the mean daily motion for 26 degrees per day, starting at 0 to going up to 14 on our left side, and on the bottom we see the planets. So Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto apply to conjunctions and oppositions and return charts only. We see Moon being the highest at 13.21 and the lowest being Pluto at 0.02. Next, we're going to look at the solar arc and return synthesis combination method. This is from the Department of Predictive Technique. I've been running the solar arc against the 2026 solar return all month, and the synthesis writes itself. The subject's natal sun at 28 degrees Leo is 275.8 degrees of arc short of the natal moon at 03 degrees Gemini. At 1 degree per year, the arc carries the sun onto the moon's degree in the subject's 34th year, the year that has just begun at the 2026 return. The signature arc of the year is therefore the sun-moon arc itself, a year of emotional self-presentation, of the identity learning to feel. The synthesis is the solar returns transit state, the arrival of the arc's themes. Each return planet crossing the arc projected position of a natal planet marks the month when that natal promise activates. The timing table in Figure 6 ranks the crossings. We see the return sun sits within a degree of the arc projected natal Venus position. A near immediate activation of the year's Venusian affairs, while the return Mars still waits more than 30 degrees of arc, deferring its activation to late in the year. So we see the rule for the register. The return tells you what, the arc tells you when, and the transit tells you whether the world cooperates. And here we see the solar arc X return synthesis. The arc dials on the left, carrying the natal sun onto the natal moon's degree, and the timing table on the right ranking the year's activations. So the return chart transits are timed by the solar arc, and the year's theme arrives when the natal promise crosses the return degree. So we notice how the arc reaches the moon, the sun, and reaches 274.9 degrees. So natal 28 degrees Leo, that's the sun, and natal moon at 03 degrees Gemini. The arc is the signature arc of the year. The lunar degree, the sun reaches at age 33. When the solar arc carries a natal point onto the return degree, the theme is time, typically within adding subtracting 1 degrees of arc equals 1 year. Then we see natal Jupiter, arc projected Gemini 25 degrees, 2026 return will be Leo 11 degrees. Natal moon, arc projected Pisces 09 degrees. Return for 2026 is Sag 19 degrees. And then continuing on with the natal sun, we see arc projected, I'll just say AP, Gemini 04 degrees, and the 2026 return, Leo 28 degrees. Natal Mercury, AP, Taurus 16 degrees, 2026 return is Leo 23 degrees. Natal Mars, AP is Pisces 22 degrees, 2026 return Cancer 06 degrees. Natal Venus, AP is Gemini 23 degrees, 2026 return Libra 14 degrees. Natal Uranus, AP Libra 20 degrees, and 2026 return is Gemini 05 degrees. And natal Saturn, AP Scorpio 19 degrees, 2026 return Aries 14 degrees. To the Resynthesis Station, Department of Lunar Returns Laboratory. So we went over this retrograde protocol, and it has a corollary, I want on the record before it escapes me. When a return planet is retrograde at the same degree it occupied in the natal chart, the resynthesis station, the theme is not merely reviewed, it is refounded. The planet's affairs return to their origin degree in the sky to renegotiate their terms at the source. The natal promise is amended, not repeated. For our subject, Uranus retrograde at 05 degrees Gemini in the 2026 return approaches this condition. We see natal Uranus stands at 14 degrees Capricorn, so the station is not exact, but the sign of the return Uranus, Gemini, the third house sign by whole sign count, is a sign opposite the natal Uranus's dispositor chain, and the return Uranus squares the natal Uranus by nearly exact degree. The correction is in progress rather than complete. The year reopens the network and invention theme and leaves it at year's end partially refounded. A fully exact resynthesis station is the rarest and most powerful signal signature in return work. I am asking the laboratory to search 1,000 charts for its recurrence and measure what follows it. The theories. The entries record the discovery. The theories state the result. Each theory is written to be computable, falsifiable, and reproducible, and each carries its falsification conditions in plain language. So the first theory is the house shift signature formalized, and we're going to be looking at statement, rules of reading, worked example, as well as falsification condition.